introduction. Yes. So, Tarun Bhartiya is a documentary filmmaker and photographer, Hindi poet, and political activist based in Shillong. His image making has been an adjunct to his political preoccupations on themes of everyday life of resistance movements, borders and belonging, destruction of indigenous modes of production, and these days, authoritarian religious fundamentalist remaking of the Indian state and society. From the images of Spelity, Lyngdoh, Langrin of Domiasiat, the heavy metal headbangers, churchgoers during service to peasant lunchtime in Shillong, cultivation fields in Nongkseh, Tarun becomes the storyteller of the people through his lens, bringing to the viewers the raw, almost bone-bare presentation of his subjects. Through the artistry of his camera, his subjects become like those of the Raft of the Medusa by Théodore Géricault, presenting to us the theatre of life. Tarun Bhartiya's films include Brief Life of Insects, 2015 Mumbai International Film Festival, Best Sound Award, The Last Train in Nepal, 2014 BBC 4, Royal Television Society Award for Best Director, and he kept it in brackets factual. When the Hens Crow, 2013, Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, 2010, the Royal Television Society Award for Best Documentary Series. As an editor, he has worked on notable films with filmmakers like Vasudha Joshi, Girl Song, Songlines, and Cancer Katha, Special Jury Award, National Awards, 2012. Red Ant Dream, editor and co-writer, Sanjay Kak, 2014. Jashn-e Azadi, Sanjay Kak 2007, and In Camera, Ranjit Palin 2010 National Award for Best Editing. He returned his Indian National Film Award in protest against the Indian government's inaction against the attacks on minorities in India. In 2021, 23rd Madurai International Documentary and Short Film Festival hosted a retrospective of his documentaries. His most recent exhibition, Unaddressed Picture Postcards from Khasi Jaintia Hills, India at Diffusion, Welsh International Festival of Photography in Cardiff, is part of his long-term photo project, Nyam, Faith Hinyotrem. He holds a grant from Indian Foundation for the Arts, IFA, to make Nyam Book, a photographic exploration of faith in Khasi Jaintia Hills. As a Sarai Fellow, he researched Mangta, Fear and Loathing in Shillong. So with that, I think obviously he's done much more than that as well, but I think that will suffice for the evening.
Tarun, do you want to say anything before we start? Or shall we just go ahead? Tarun, can you hear us?
You can begin.
Yeah. Okay. So it's 7:15 at the moment, and the conversation will go on till 8:30. We'll from 8 onwards, we'll open up, to questions. If any of you have any questions, you can write on the chat box. You can raise your hand, and don't be afraid to interrupt if you feel the need to. So many of you, like me, who are big fans of Tarun's works, his work struggles to work, struggles to love, struggles to be witness, and generally struggles against oppression, and sort of takes down the curtains of landscapes and tranquility, and to introduce to us to the complications of the everyday. And especially in Meghalaya, I think Tarun has offered us a lot, in terms of visual diagrams of injustices and resistance. So in that sense, Tarun, can we begin by sort of like addressing the misaligned boundary between documentation and art, and what it means to you, as, to use your word, an art worker, to document?
Can you hear me? I'm not sure where my...
Yeah. You're all
So, thank you, Northeast India Arts Initiative. It is, I've been following various conversations which you have organized, and with a kind of a almost like something which we needed in Shillong, a conversation which is like open-ended and which focuses on various kinds of artistic practices. So thank you, and so let me begin. I'm not very good at this, so you'll have to excuse me because I may just do kind of um, um, on the let me start by talking about what Jerry asked about documentary and art, and why why do I choose to describe myself as documentary image maker. In that sense, I make films as well as I photograph. I write too, but when it comes to, and documentary is a word which is quite a boring word, in the sense that the image it evokes in people's mind is about record keepers, about records. And documentary, if I, when someone asks me what you do, so so I tell them I'm a documentary, I make documentary images. So usually the reactions are, people say, okay, so you do kind of National Geographic kind of filmmaking, or sometimes people will think that I do kind of government film with this very serious voiceover, or some people will think that I make films or I take photographs of uplifting subjects, like to teach people how to, and this has been a kind of way in which documentary has been understood. But I still choose to call myself documentary image maker, because I think that documenting, which is, it's not such a simple fact of just recording something which is happening in front of you. Documenting is a form, it's a quite a simple thing to say, that when you even record, you have a stance towards that way you record that. And what the kind of films which I have been making, or kinds of photographs I have been taking, they are not merely in that sense a kind of a transparent way of showing you something which you won't see before, or recording it for posterity. And I think, although those things are kind of a byproduct of what I do, but I think that, and especially in a place like Shillong, where a lot of lens-based image making, film and photography, is more about, in some senses, creating representations which are provocative, I will say decorative, or touristy in that sense, or to present a certain kind of certain kind of landscape which is which you think belongs to this place, and which people would see and be attracted to. And something of that kind I've been a bit uncomfortable with, in the sense that I think that the kinds of historical, social, political processes which are happening in this place also needs to be recorded, or it also needs to be acknowledged, and also needs to be understood. And so in that sense, for me, documentary is a form of research, a form of understanding, a form of analysis of the reality in which I live in. So, I don't know whether that answers, but that's why I still choose to, and obviously there is a tradition to which I belong of documentary, which is, one doesn't have to go into art historical kind of a thing. Documentary may be boring, but it has a kind of quite a glorious history in that sense. So I think if that describes it. Jerry? Oh, I can see my images.
Yes, I've been sharing them.
Okay.
Throughout. So Jerry.
I love this. I love this image of these two children. I always carry my camera, and I had gone to pick up my sons from tuition, and Hindi tuition for and I was coming back, and these two boys. Basically, the elder brother must be watching or playing games or watching some, I imagine, dirty movies. And so I just took this picture. It's in Lyngdoh.
Reminds me so much of my own childhood, Tarun. Yeah. When you were talking about how you document sort of like the socio-political, Shillong is so much more than touristy decorative images that you see. Shillong or Meghalaya or any places that you visit, in fact. I was also sort of like wondering in that sense, because you always sort of have to assume this these very complex positions in relation to your identity as, a Bihari man who is married to a Khasi woman who is Kong Angela, by the way, such a, force to be reckoned with in a place like in here or even across the nation. And, an intimate relation with the space. So with Meghalaya in general. So, can you talk about like, this problem or this intricacy, especially with regards to how you make art that are powerful, but at the same time very uncomfortable to to a lot of people.
Yeah. So let me start off by telling you a story, which is to do once. What happened was that Cartoon Network. In Cartoon Network, they used to have, they would wish children's birthdays, happy birthday, someone from Jumri Tilaiya, happy birthday, someone from Dimapur. So we were watching Cartoon Network. I was watching it with my daughter, and I told my daughter, why don't you send your name? Your birthday is coming. So she said, no, I'm not going to send my name because only Hindi people get their names up there. So I said, so her mother told her that, but your father is Hindi. Hindi for her is anyone, obviously, who speaks Hindi or who has names which are not like Shillong names. So my daughter told Angela that, no, he's not Hindi. My father is Dakhar. So, and it was at that moment, someone, I came to Shillong in 1980, just 6 months after 19 big troubles of 1979 had happened, and I used to live in Lyngdoh. When you're growing up, terms like Dakhar, which is obviously it's a much more complex term than just a pejorative term, which people, especially non-tribals, take it as. So, that moment when my daughter classified me with love that I am a Dakhar, I said that, that's the way I want to describe myself. I want to describe myself. I want to function in this place, both as a non-tribal, but as non-tribal as Dakhar, whose mixed daughter imagines his ethnic position to be. And I think even in terms of the way I approach this place, I belong to this place in the sense that I live here. I grew up here. I grew up here with obviously, all privileges which come out of being an Indian in a place like this. being, my father taught in the university here, so we were okay in that sense. We were not working class non-tribals in that way, and also in that sense, my sense of being an outsider also meant that I did not mean that I did not want to understand this place, because there is a whole tradition in Shillong, and if you know Shillong, is that everyone calls it a very multicultural, cosmopolitan place, which is now no longer cosmopolitan. People think that people don't talk across, usually across community lines in that way. But 80s, when the troubles were happening, I started making friends, across my, it was just like a teenage kind of a thing where people will frighten you. You can't get into Khasi locality, or, you'll get beaten up, or you will get, all these fears which people say. But I started making friends, and I started making friends with people who themselves, even if they were Khasi, they were in tension with their own community identities. They were people who were not comfortable being just a Khasi. They were interested in writing about things which they found problematic, and especially in 86, 87, 88, when Shillong Poetry Circle started, where all kinds of people joined Shillong Poetry Circle, and you shared certain kind of conversations, and that's something I think who am my own practice as both writer or my own politics or image making. I situated in that moment of those 2-3 years when I realized that you could have a conversation, you could have a controversial conversation, you could argue, you can even fight, you can, for me, violence is not merely violence can also, like, for instance, one of the research thing which I did was Mangta. Mangta was a common thing which, when someone met you as a someone said Mangta and you said yes, then you had a fight, and I fought in Limokra, in that sense. And within 2 days, I was friends with the person with whom I had fought. I got beaten up, but it's a friendship which continues. So I realized that to belong is not a process which belonging has to be struggled for. Belonging has to be, belonging has to be fought for. It doesn't come automatically. People think that just because I'm an Indian, I should be accepted in Shillong. I find that a bit of a problematic kind of a thing. And on the other hand, I also think that it does not mean that there's other kind of belonging that, then you become, in that sense, because I belong, I can speak on behalf of whatever I'm doing, and that also I find, my belonging does not mean that, I can speak for the people. I can speak for the images which I have made, or I can speak for the people who appear in my films. No, I can only speak for myself. I can only put forward my impressions, my ideas, my questioning of whatever I find. And I may be wrong in that sense, sometimes people tell me that, why do you, I made a film, which was, it's a film called Lamana, which is about my relationship with Angela. But it is also, most of the film is set in Maulai, and Maulai is a place where people say it's a no-go place. But I actually went because I used to live in Nehu campus, and you pass through Maulai, and I have always found Maulai to be in that sense, a friendly place. And I have always wanted to make a film there. So when I made that film, people said that, some people, that why did you make a film which says things about, and this was after a local district council wanted to make a law about inter-community marriages. Why do you make a film which has things to comment about our reality? I said, I'm part of that reality, you know, in that sense. You may not think that I'm part of that reality. It matters to me because even at autobiographical level, it matters to my children. But I'm also very curious, and I'm a you know, in that sense, a very lorny person. I'm always interested in what is happening, why this is happening. So, and at sometimes being outsider helps. Sometimes it doesn't, in that sense. So, like something like this, the image which is there here. It's on 15th August when Bunds used to happen. And I decided to walk. And this is near Motpan. It's almost like, it's one of my favorite places in Shillong because all three different kinds of Shillong meet at this Motpan. On one side, you have the traditional Shillong, the CM-ship Shillong. On the other side, you have municipal Shillong. And then others, just close by is the cantonment Shillong. And so on 15th August, it was Band. I went there. I had my camera, and it was fascinating. Those three people, there's a Khasi boy, there's a Nepali boy, they are friends. They came, they were looking for booze, I think. And they saw the camera, and then they, and something is, I could, one could be frightened. One is frightened sometimes in situations like these, but fear cannot be the only reality you live with. You have to step out of that and converse. So I talked to them. That's why I know that they were looking for booze. And in foreground is a girl who is a Bengali speaking rag picker. So, you know, all kinds of things happened here in that sense. Jerry?
Yeah.
Answer or no?
There was, yeah, a lot to think about, in fact. But I guess, you know, when you were talking about belonging and how you have to struggle for it and fight for it, I was also thinking about how your politics and your activism here has always been met with skepticism, especially from the local youth groups and so on. And what was so fascinating about what you said is also that you do not intend to speak on behalf of, right? And I think your works and your images, despite being in, street photography and so on, they're not pictures of the street, rather pictures in the street, you know, and how you sort of like speak, and what you're saying, you speak with everyone else, and that was so significant to me. And I was thinking, like, you know, if you can address how image making or art in general can be used as a form of solidarity in that sense, right? As a tool of communication, but also, in fact, like what you said, as a tool of fighting.
Yes, you know, what is art in that sense? You know, in that way, you know, if art is merely a representation or you know, in that sense, codification in the, of reality. For me, I think, you know, I think that if art is about imagination, and imagination is very much connected to the idea of freedom, this, you know, so art in that sense explores the questions of freedom. Because if it does not explore the question of freedom, then it is merely a kind of a, you know, just a kind of a record that way. And so, for instance, for me, camera or the lens is the way through which and and solidarity, and the word which it's a word pregnant with possibilities, because why do you want to express solidarity? And solidarity cannot be, solidarity cannot be about, trying to liberate people or save people, because solidarity is about, for me, being, for me at least, my politics is about, when you said that, some people will think that they're skeptical of the kind of politics we were doing, but when we started working with trade unions and working class people, with hawkers and street vendors, even in that sense, solidarity with sexual minorities in the place. You are, the reason why you do this is because, the most cliched thing that, you do this because I myself cannot explore my freedom if I don't explore the freedom along with other people, in that sense, And that's where this idea of not speaking on behalf, and I keep it, for me, that is really central to the way in which I try to understand my own work. Sometimes I feel that, something which I have done, it is almost like I'm trying to fix something. I'm trying to codify something. I'm trying to say this is the final reality I have observed. And that's when I get, doubtful about my own work. And sometimes you feel that, like, the film which I made, Brief Life of Insects, it's part of a series of films called Songs to Live By. And my idea was to explore the idea of folk, because this idea of folk culture is so, uh, people in India are supposed to have classical culture. People in the hills are supposed to have folk culture, and folk culture also in a certain way. So I wanted to really understand whether there was something called folk culture or not, and folk singing or not, because most of the programs of folk culture, folk music, or those things I used to go in State Central Library used to be such sweet songs about environment and about God and about those things, and there were very few songs about love and, about sex, about those kind of things. So I said, yeah, which kind of folk music is this? If folk culture is about, are people really only singing about environment and God and, their relationship, their identity? So I started traveling, and so Brief Life of Insects is a film which is, by accident, I recorded songs which farmers sing when they're threshing, and this song they make it up as they go along. So I made that film, and I showed the first time. The first screening of the film I did was in the village where I shot it, as part of the village fete. And then, as it turns out, that the people who appeared in the film wrote down the songs they had sung, which they had made up actually. And they wrote it down. And then after a month, they came to Shillong and they called me and said, we are going to sing our song now in All India Radio. So I said, but what, you're going to make it up? No, now we have the lyrics, so we can sing it. So even if you intend not to codify, you end up codifying in that sense. I was quite amused as well as pretty sad in that sense. If now this will become the shock of our song, which is, and it will be taken out of the, the processes of labor it has been a part of for hundreds of years. So even if you don't want to speak on behalf, even if you don't want to codify, even if you don't want to, make a kind of a final comment, it may, the processes are such that you may end up doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you were talking about this how programs sort of like would sanitize the folk and all of that, and I think that is so also so fundamental in your work, where you seem to to go to areas that a lot of people are afraid of going. So even in your series about faith, like the images that you were exploring, you were I don't know, there was the sense that a lot of us, a lot of the pictures and the images that we see, especially of Protestantism, or even of Nyamten Rai, is just to sort of like showcase this is what is going on now. But you're sort of like one of those people who's not afraid of going a little deeper, I suppose, if that makes sense, going below the surface and to the history of all of these things, and like your current exhibition and all. So what do you have to say about this specifically, like this kind of sanitization project that is going on? And we see this a lot, I think, in lens-based practitioners, specifically from the region.
Sanitization, in the sense, that's but I think, if you are interested in your craft, your art, and you're interested in the questions of, trying to arrive at certain kind of truth or certain kind of understanding, you cannot sanitize. People do it. I always have this joke about landscapes, because I tried to, just for fun, I wanted to take those pictures of waterfalls and the sunset. But somehow there was something, I could see the wrappers, thrown around there, or I could look at the graffiti of people expressing love to each other. And so you may want to sanitize, but as an artist who wants to sanitize, as a person who's making those images, you want to sanitize, that the purpose for that is something else. The kind of work I am doing, I don't think I want to understand. I want to understand the process. I want to understand, if Nongkseh fall looks like this, what impact does making a kind of a boundary wall have on the view? Is that boundary, and it raises another question. This is, before that, was there a boundary wall? Who funded it? Was there some corruption in this? So all kinds of questions it raises. And, and for me, making images, at least is part of me. And that's why making images and doing politics, for me, is not different in that sense. And the kind of question one asks about why people are not being paid, why people are not being paid in their minimum wages, is connected to the way I see people's labor in that way. Or maybe something I learned by there is an image which I made of these farmers sitting in shifting jhum field in Western Ribhoi. Now it can be a romantic image, but it is also it is also an image of people whose land has been the common land has been privatized, and it has been bought over by a bureaucrat who was posted in Ribhoi district, and the whole hills are bought off by, so most of the farms which you see in Bhoi, for instance, private farms, used to at one point of time belong to the people who live there. And so, how can you separate that? How can I sanitize that image in that way? So sanitization is a political project in that sense. You want people to know Meghalaya as a certain kind of a place, but we know that sanitization has been is responsible in that way for a state, a society which has 76% of its people who are landless. It is responsible for a certain kind of society. This it's all about sanitization. If you think that people should know Meghalaya by those kind of images, it is going to lead to a society where the fundamental questions of how people survive, how people live, how people get educated, how people die will not be talked about. So anytime as a image maker, you make an image which hides reality, it's a kind of a political stance you're taking. I don't care. I don't care about what is happening. You know, poverty, Meghalaya is one of the poorest states. It's poorer than my own state of Bihar. It's one of the most unequal societies in Northeast India. It has the highest maternal mortality rate. Are these not the questions of art? Are these not the questions of how our stance towards our reality should be? And I think picture postcard notion of Meghalaya is part of the same projects which the local elites have about how to keep people in control. And that's the question we have to ask. Like, you know, and it's about Meghalaya, but at India, at a level of India, if you question the way people lived, or people are, you know, question the ideas of history, like for instance, the project which you're talking about, Niam Faith in Neutre, which is a set of unaddressed picture postcards. Can I share my screen? I can.
Nafi, is that possible?
Yeah. Wait, let me just make you host, then you can share. Yeah.
Anyway, so that project, which was, you know, I started looking at faith because I'm not a believer in supreme powers and those kind of things. But I have always been curious about how people believe, why people believe. And it all began in around 2006, 2007. If you are from Khasi Jaintia Hills, you would remember there was a whole revival thing which happened where children were getting revived. They were, you know, they thought that they were traveling to heaven. And so I was very curious about that belief. It all began as that. It was a very simple thing. I wanted to understand why people are, you know, going to certain churches and seeing images of Christ appear on cross. And it was not, I was not out there to, you know, debunk the idea. I'm not interested in debunking. I'm interested in understanding why people are doing this, why people are, you know, so deeply, why do they so deeply believe? Many of the children used to cry. They used to talk about poverty in their family, all these kind of things. So I started that project then, but this project took on a very different kind of a thing where all over the country you have, you know, with Hindu fascists taking over the country, they are trying to create a certain monolithic notion of what India is. So certainly the idea of understanding questions of faith, debates on faith, which was happening in Khasi Jaintia Hills, started having a meaning beyond it, you know. So so if you see a church, or if you see, for instance, some traditional practices, you have to ask those questions about diversity, about will this diversity exist? In that sense, you know, art making, at least I think, has to, you know, if you do not confront the, you know, your reality around you, that's a stance you take. You want to say that it doesn't matter to me. And I think for me, it matters. For me, it is important that, you know, that when I shoot sunset and waterfall, I need to look at this boundary wall has been made under this scheme, which cost 5 crore rupees. So you know, so it's that, I think that's what, maybe that, although I think that my images could be beautiful, but they're beautiful in the sense that the beauty is not decoration. Beauty is a way in which you can understand in certain, beauty is a kind of a search for totality, and to understand anything, you need to understand the process. So I think even made under SRWP costing 5 lakh rupees, sponsored by this MLA in the image of Nokkalekai is for me beautiful.
You know, following from what you said, I think what was really scary is this sort of idea that people are developing, that a lot of these photographers who go out and shoot images of landscapes and of you know, quote unquote exotic places in all across Basora and other, you know, West Khasi Hills and so on, is that they keep on saying that you know, we're boosting our the tourist industry, right? The tourism industry, and this is doing something for the people from that region. It's giving like a very long-centric elitist idea, because they just feel that, and essentially like, it goes back to what you said as well, like that these kind of questions or these kind of permissions are not sought from the people, right? They're never in line with what the people really feel about these kind of touristic pleasures that are being gathered from their places and so on. So yeah, what you said about, you know, the responsibility of art, the social responsibility of art, that is something for us to I think to always keep in mind. And
it's
I guess
not about social, it's not about responsibility, it is about, sometimes the idea of social responsibility can be disastrous for art. In the sense that, people say, like, if you write something, I remember one of the authors who I really like, Kempham, a friend, and there's a poem by him called Blasphemous Lines from My Mother. And if you haven't read the poem, please do read it. It's a fascinating poem about his love for his mother, but it uses a kind of language or describes a kind of growing up which does not sound responsible to people who think that community identity has to be of a certain kind, has to be puritanical and has to be decent and has to be those kind of things. So it's not about social responsibility. It is about a certain kind of exploring and interrogating the truth, which can be very irresponsible. Sometimes, like for today, I was listening to this song, which has just come out, not Banjab, Thay Thay song, which is this really dance number. And I was totally struck by there are issues with the song, but I was totally impressed by the song, that they at least started putting out in open the kind of, putting out in open desires and sexual imagination of young people. It's not a responsible song, but it is a song which actually is which uncovers the kind of erotics which Shillong has always had, which people don't talk about. So it's not about social responsibility. It's about, and going back to what I said, the idea of art as imagination and imagination as freedom, or as at least yearning towards that freedom. It's not through responsibility, but it is through, through exploring or imagine what you want to imagine and putting out for conversation.
And
so
I think that,
yeah.
No, go ahead, please.
No, tourist images can exist, but if they're the only images which exist, then there is an issue.
Right. Right. Oh, and I was just thinking, when you said about yearning for that freedom and for imagination and possibilities, really. how that sort of like also intertwines with the whole idea of descent, right? And we've seen your work, um, and you've even given up an award, to sort of put forward this, this idea of descent and this counter to the nation state and so on. I think my question here is, do you think art is possible, or how do we make art possible within the restrictions of a nation state, with the current political atmosphere and all of that?
By being subversive? No, but the thing is that art, or at least for me, the interesting art has always been in a kind of a tension with consensus of whether it's a national consensus, whether it's a communitarian consensus, whether it's a sexual consensus, it's a gender consensus. Those have been the interesting art. It's now that you have put them in books and you think that they are great examples of great art, but we forget that Pissarro was an anarchist. Some of the greatest of the artists have been in that sense misfits. Art is about being a misfit, because at least for me, I always feel very happy when people say, yeah, we try to fit in. No, I said, no, I don't want to fit in, because how do you explore truth if you fit in? So whether it's nation state, whether it's your family, whether it is your relationship, for me it is I think this tension with your existing reality, existing truths, the kind of falsehoods, is what makes art.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, going back to what you said earlier about, how photographers, artists in general, have to earn a buck, right? And but what has happened lately is that there's also this fear of the prison, right? So while before it was fundamentally about, okay, can art make money? Can I survive doing what I love, and so on and so forth? And now it's like, okay, can I be put in jail if I do the kind of work that I do? So it's like, I think I'm trying to phrase this question to not sound condescending, but I don't know how. So what is your advice to younger people who are engaging with art, and who are sort of like dealing with this fear of of their work being controlled by the system at large, and being the fear of survival or prison and so on?
I'm no one to give advice.
That's what I was worried about, that you were going to say.
No, but this thing, much more than artists are in that sense little more, I think, political activists, and then even people who are working people, of especially belonging to marginalized communities, castes. They have been facing the onslaught of the fascist nation state in that sense. So it's artists also have faced, but let's not say that they're the only artists are facing that. And I'm not one for heroics and martyrdom or that kind of thing, but if state, if and that's why you can, in that sense, for me, actually that is easy. If state comes and police knocks at your door and takes you away, more frightening is the would be a situation where you think that you're doing subversive stuff, and state takes that and hangs it in the gallery. So appropriation of subversive. So you have to, in that sense, it's a kind of a dual kind of a struggle, to survive in that sense. Whether if you will get appropriated or whether you will go to jail, and I don't know what to choose in that way. And I think and when I said I don't want to give advice, and why should I give advice here? I think I learned so much. So like even the song like Thay Thay, which you should listen to, it's a nice song, or Kinmo by Jesse Lyngdoh. It is from popular culture, but it really I can't imagine those two songs coming up 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Which plays around with questions of gender, sexuality, about desire. I think younger people are much more courageous than what we are or we were in that sense, So, and they are pushing the boundaries. So I don't have, advice to give them. I actually want to learn from them. How do they do it actually? So
that's very true. I think one last question before we open up to everyone. You said you were afraid of your work being sort of like appropriated by the state. I just want to ask this question out of, I think, for my own entertainment, I suppose. We see that your work, especially sort of like images of conspiracy and all of that, they have been, taken up by a lot of groups, and groups that do not necessarily share your kind of politics. And they take these works, they use them for their own purposes, and without knowing that they originated from you, right? So how do you feel about this, and how do you feel about, let's say, your work being used by not necessarily state propaganda, but other forms of propaganda?
Yeah, there are images of, so like Spelity's image was made in 2006. I've been to Domiasiat many times, and I lived there. And can you see that image? Yeah. So if people are using it for posters, for, one of the things which really kills me is that, and especially with photographs, photograph is such an eminently reproducible medium, I just hate it. I know people just put it in the middle, or that thing, they will try to claim copyright this image, Tarun Bhartiya photography and all that kind of thing. It's an image, it can be reproduced. If it gives you meaning, if this image of Spelity, I think that wherever it has been used, I think Spelity, people feel inspired by Spelity. So I don't mind it. I don't care if people, I've never cared about in my images being, although, during the pandemic, I've survived by selling prints, but many times I feel a bit of a fraud, in the sense that what is it about photographs that, makes it exclusive? Painting, I can understand. Sculpture, I can understand. But what is there about photographs? And especially now with social media, digital, there's nothing, so it doesn't have that aura in that sense, which makes it exclusive. So, copyright is just a hogwash, that. So I, like, for instance, I sell prints. People can make prints. I really work out those prints. I can sign them to, so people, but I think I normally, when people ask me price, I said, whatever you want to pay me for the print, which supports my photography. But there have been students who have, so I have sold the same print for, art market price, but I have also sold the same, given the same image to a student who wanted to print it, and he sent me 200 rupees on my GPay to support. And it was okay, it's just an image. it's not Spelity in that sense, you know. So I think we have to get out of this thing of claiming and ki ye mera hai and all that kind of thing. I personally don't find it much value in that kind of thing. Circulation of images is much more interesting than ownership of that image.
Definitely true. If anyone have any question, can you raise your hand or post them in the chat box? I think this is a good time to start taking in questions. Or just unmute yourself if you feel like you have any other anything to say.
Hello, Tarun.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. So hi, Ashish here. So thanks a lot for this wonderful session. I think I was really absorbed by that. I mean, my question is like I have lots of questions, but just like my immediate question would be that I mean, I've followed your like your very deep engagement with the politics of Shillong and Meghalaya. Overall, my question is that you choose to frame your photographs always in a in a monochrome fashion. So, what is the politics like? Is your monochrome approach part of your sort of analysis or your sort of cynicism with the larger post-cardization of Meghalaya, or why do you choose monochrome over color? Like that was my sort of question.
Really good question. I really don't have a very profound reason for choosing monochrome, in the sense that, you know, I have never owned very good cameras, and I really haven't owned even a frame, you know, what people call full frame kind of a thing. I take photographs with whatever lens, whatever image, you know, making device I have. I have mobile, small cameras, cheaper cameras, second-hand cameras, and colors, you know. If you have a really bad camera, I think, at least for me, the colors used to never come out okay in that sense, you know. And then also, as someone said that, you know, color photography is much more like free verse. You need to know how to control it, and I don't have that kind of control. Monochrome at least lets me control my image making. So I don't have a very profound reason for it, but very practical reason for it. So for instance, if I take a picture on a mobile nowadays, you know, there are mobiles which are very good, but I've never owned mobiles which are more expensive than 12,000 rupees. So even if your image resolution is low, the image can come out interesting in monochrome. So, you know, if that answers your question, there's nothing profound about it. But once I chose the idea of monochrome was in the last picture postcards I did, because I had these archival images which were in color. And so initially I thought that I should let the archival images be in color and my own photographs, which are obviously shot in monochrome, or at least processed in monochrome. I should leave them, you know, let that contrast exist. Then I realized that, no, let people be confused which is archival and which is present day photograph. So I actually converted all my archival images, which were in color, sepia and those kind of things, to similar tones of monochrome, to because I wanted people to question even the very idea of archive, you know. Is archive telling you the truth, or is my contemporary image telling you the truth?
Tarun, there's also a question in the chat saying, if we agree for a while, it's by Papiho, Papino. If we agree for a while that art is about politics of difficulty, what are the strategies to put out these art in conversation? I think you can see that.
Yeah. You know, put out, you know, at least nowadays, I think that there are more possibilities, at least in putting out visual arts. So, you know, from social media to that, but also I think that, let's say about films, documentaries, and you all know that making independent documentary is getting increasingly difficult under this regime. You know, you can't even show them in colleges because many of the independent filmmakers don't have censor certificate, so colleges don't allow you to show the films because they ask you for censor certificate. If you want to apply for censor certificate, the censor board doesn't give you censor certificate. So we need to explore new, and obviously television is not going to show that, Netflix is not going to show that. Actually, you will be surprised, you know, that Netflix, which chooses to make controversial documentary about US and that, chooses not to make controversial documentaries in India. So people who think that, you know, foreign channels will be able to, if they want to function in India, even someone like Al Jazeera in that sense, you know, does not show controversial Indian documentaries. You know, there are obviously people like Cinema of Resistance in Calcutta, Pratirodhka Cinema, even Madurai Films, you know, independent ways in which you can show your film, you can show your work. Because I think one of the problems I think I have with social media thing is the people see it individually, you know, it's almost become individual based, the idea of viewing or seeing. The conversations which you have in community viewing in a cinema hall or in a college or a street corner, so and those kind of spaces, we have to work towards creating it. No one is going to come and create it for us. If we want to show, and that's what I say, that, you know, they're like Cinema of Resistance or Pratirodhka Cinema in Gorakhpur, or you know, there are multiple festivals or screening groups like Pedestrian Pictures in Karnataka, who take the films, show it in wherever they find the space to show it, in community halls and localities. And I think that's what we have to. That's how the conversations begin. You know, conversations don't begin because you know, someone as an artist, as a image maker, as a writer, you have to take your work to the people. And I don't think there is anything, you know, PR agencies are not going to do that for you. Neither will your publisher. So, you know, if you take your work, if you are making political work, it's your political responsibility in that sense to take it out and show it and start the conversations.
Yes, can I ask the question?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Tarun. Tarun, you just said that, you know, through your art, you know, you don't want to speak on behalf of anyone. You know, but sort of in the process, you know, you do, you know, sort of become representative in a certain way. And, you know, like, you know, even I feel that I've always looked at pictures of Shillong in terms of Ward's Lake and, you know, Barapani and those billowing clouds, etc. So do you think in some sense you have sort of, you know, begun in a sense to actually speak on behalf of, you know, those parts of Shillong or those people which have been unexplored, you know, till now?
Hopefully not. You know, see, when I say on behalf of, or like, you know, one of the phrases which I really don't like also is this, you are the voice of the voiceless. No, I think that I don't want to do those things. Sometimes it may be possible that people think that, okay, this is the image of struggling casual workers of Shillong, or this is the image of an union. But to understand those images, or what images point towards, is it's towards a possibility where, as a viewer, you can, in some senses, learn about those things, and then you finally have to go and meet and be in solidarity with people or the struggles which these images represent. And see, speaking of, obviously, one is not saying that any text can finally become, people will take it as, oh, this is the representative image of the thing. But as an artist, I will need to question those. And I don't think my images can ever become representative of Shillong, because for lots of people, that is not the image of Shillong they will like to see. So there is for me, there's an image of, in my Clam book, which is there also, I think, of this man carrying the cow head on a day before the lockdown happened. For me, I like that image a lot, but I don't think anyone would like that image to be a representative of or that police and the image with, this image. I don't think anyone is going to enjoy having that image as a representative, and and this I think so. That's the thing, and I would not like to be speaking on behalf, and maybe in the images, if those images become just the all the replacement of reality which they are trying to comprehend, then I would be very sad, and I would have to redo, rethink my practice.
Nabanipa has their hands up. Can you ask your question?
Yeah. Hello, Tarun, can you hear me?
Yes, Nabanipa.
Yeah. Hi, Tarun. Wonderful listening to you, and and your the Niyam series. Absolutely wonderful. I was thinking about something as you spoke. For example, if you were asked, for instance, hypothetically speaking, to do something on the war that is going on between Russia and Ukraine, what kind of images do you think? What would come to your mind? Of course, you are not there. I understand all that, but would you back it with a text? Would your images show which side? Of course, yeah. About war, for instance.
Oh, no, that's a.
It just,
it's a difficult question, but it is, it's a question which I should think about. But I would photograph my television. I photograph anything and everything. Like in my Clam book, which is about, a certain kind of a narrative about the pandemic. I was not in Delhi. So I started photographing my Facebook feed. I started photographing television. I started photographing newspapers. And I personally, images should speak for themselves. They don't. I am not a person who runs away from text.
Yeah.
What that text can do, I think that to be, if you have to do a text, you have to do a text. You want people to understand, you want people to participate in the kind of questions you are posing, so that they engage with those questions and they challenge what a certain kind of meaning I'm presenting before you. So like this image of people sitting and eating their lunch in a land which used to belong to the ancestors is now private, and they're renting it from some retired bureaucrat.
Yeah.
I don't mind writing that. Because I don't, this I like, when I was studying in film school, people used to say, your documentary should not have voiceover. The reality should speak for itself.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Great.
And I think that if voiceover is needed, it's needed. It doesn't have to be Melville de Mello voice of God narration, but I'm, just to be provocative, and this I have been doing for some time. I'm in a propaganda business. I like the word propaganda. And propaganda in a revolutionary sense used to mean that you ask the people who were part of the revolution in 1917, when Mayakovsky went and he ran a propaganda train. It did not mean that he was trying to hammer in a message, but he was telling people that this is how, let's try to understand what is happening in our society. So if I'm in a propaganda business, I need to use all the tools I have with me. I have my camera, I have my text, I have sounds, so everything which goes out to clarifies these questions in front of the people. Maybe my answer may not be acceptable to them, but at least they should be willing to come inside and see that why I'm asking these questions. So, in that sense, if it's a war in Ukraine, I'm not there. I will photograph the television. I'll photograph television in that sense, which I've done.
So, in fact, because as we listen to you, I have my nephew is beside me, and he is an interesting. He does a bit of photography here and there. He's an engineer by profession, but this is what we've been talking. That can we kind of, do we need a text? We understand that photographs have a language. Art has its own language, but don't we need a text? Sometimes.
Nafi, can you go back to this previous image? Now, this image makes no sense. It makes sense in terms of there are powerful people sitting there. That is the only thing as a photograph it can tell. But if I tell you that this photograph consists of both opposition and ruling party MLAs and MPs of Meghalaya, I call this photograph Men Who Rule Meghalaya. Then this photograph starts giving you a way to understand politics of Meghalaya. And if I tell you again that they are sitting in a synod, Presbyterian Church synod, happening in Smith, then it adds another layer of way to approach this image. Image in itself, by adding text, does not become, it doesn't become illustration of the text, but it exists in a kind of a dialectical relationship, which allows you to make further meaning of it.
Yeah, I just have to add that the one thing that I love about that image is also the fact that all of those characters are posing for your camera, Tarun. Sayan also has their hands up. So can you ask your question?
Hi, Tarun.
Hi, Sayan.
Hi. It's wonderful to see your photographs and so intense photographs. I just have a question. You just told that that even you do like to photograph the TV if it is required. My curiosity is that can you also take the screenshot of internet feed? Can we also record the news? Because nowadays we are highly dependent on the digital platform.
Yeah, why not? Whatever lets you understand is fair game. In the film, in Lamana, for instance, it's full of web pages and local television. Similarly, even in photographs, in my clam book, I have photographed notifications, COVID notifications, which I saw being shared because the paper was not being used. So it used to be shared on Facebook thing. Because I wanted to tell the story of that. I wanted to narrate that. So everything is, the way you consume news, or that should appear, that can appear in your practice. I don't think there is any issue with that. Television, I've always found it fascinating. Digital world, they make interesting images anyway.
Yeah. This question I'm asking because many times when I thought of photograph, like is taking the screenshot, because screenshot is nothing but framing in the digital space, right?
Yes.
So it's also another way of editing the frame, how much I want to show, how much I don't want to show. So but whenever I thought of taking the screenshot, I always also felt that is there any copyright infringement, or is there any? No, these questions came to my mind. I have no answer, and that's the reason I'm asking you. What is your advice? I mean,
again, no advice, but who cares about copyright?
Yeah.
The thing about copyright, I think, is that till someone claims copyright, you are free to play around with it. Learn from people who sample music and that, and what use you are putting it to. And especially with government thing, people who are powerful, their images, their notification, their texts, they're all fair game for me.
Okay.
So
thank you so much.
So you know, copyright is till someone asks you to take it down.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Tarun.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions?
Oh, there's
Just
a very
unmute your
interesting
mic.
question here in the text box.
Yeah.
By Rolua Puya.
And
I
also,
have a vague question.
Sorry to interrupt. I think right at the start, Dominic, this person, Dominic Marwin, had also raised his hand. So I don't know if he would like to ask the question now or not. But yeah, so Dominic, if you're here and if you have your question ready, you can just unmute yourself or put it down in this chat box. Yeah. Sorry, but Tarun, you can continue with this.
Hello. Hi. Hi.
Dominic.
Hi. It's nothing. I don't have any question. It's just because I came late at that. I joined late at that meeting. I just say hi to everyone like that.
Oh, okay. All right. Hi.
Hi, Dominic.
Hi, sir. Hi.
Hi, Dominic.
Hello, sir. Hi.
So this question, I'll read it out. It's a very nice question. How far can we say that photographs represent reality when the photograph itself can be manipulated, read, and interpreted differently, irrespective of any ideological standpoint or political commitment one has? Photographs are not reality anyway. They cannot, and they obviously have been manipulated. Photography and images have a long history of being manipulated by people from all sides of political divide. The communists have done it, the fascists have done it, and nowadays, so it's WhatsApp University does it regularly. And that's why it's very important not to confuse reality with photographs. Photographs are in certain sense, and that's where it's very important that as part of being a citizen, we should know about constitution and all those kind of things. It's also very important as a citizen to know how to read images, how to figure out what images, how images function. So in that sense, to really understand that photographs or any kind of image is basically a stance towards reality, a perspective towards reality. So if someone is manipulating an image to make it seem, so if Stalinists were manipulating images of revolution by airbrushing Trotsky out of it, they were creating a certain kind of stance towards the kind of history or reality they wanted to present. So it's, as a citizen, I think it's very important that we, get into this idea of, people are teaching people, about constitution, about their rights and other things. It's also important in that sense to understand and to be taught at that level, how to read the images and how to read those things. So
I just want to add to that as well. I think it's so necessary for us to also reject these grand narratives that are being created constantly around, artworks and so on. Anyone want to ask last questions? You can raise your hand or just unmute your mic. I don't think there's any more questions. So do you want to address anything, Tarun? Last thought?
No, hopefully I was no, it's okay. I'm fine, except for the fact that I think that as people who somehow claim ourselves to be artists, we need to, I think, have more conversations, but we also need to have conversations about our reality around us in that sense, and figure out a way in which we can challenge, the ways in which freedoms are being denied, both locally, nationally, internationally. And I think that we need to do much more here in Shillong.
Yeah, so if people can just stay, I think I just wanted to share a few more images here.
Okay, that image, can you go back to that image? It's, I call it the just previous image. This is an image on the way to Domiasiat, and I call it post-colonial ruins. These are the camps which the road makers, they want to make a bigger road, so so they are the ruins, they are the detritus of development which is being promised to people. And the next image is Bedenclum. I love bodies in that sense, And this is a Bedenclum in Tuber. And this is a Shillong. This is the Shillong I know, and this is the Shillong we see. Headbangers. These were the series of images I made in Patna, where I had to go. It's part of the Clum book of migrants walking.
Tarun, I just have to say about that. I read that article about your thing when you made the Clum book, and there was such a profound response that you had given. You were going to Bihar because your father was ill, and you were saying that the people that you were photographing were enduring much more hardships than you do, than you did at the time. So, I think that is so characteristic of your work in general, where you always are able to sort of like, I don't know, magnify the sufferings that other people are facing, and like not be so self-centric in that sense. I think on that note, shall we end the session?
Yeah, with this image, please do not click photos of the photograph. I have a whole series of.
I did that intentionally to keep that as.
Yeah, it's a very nice way to end. I really like. I have this whole image a series of people preventing people from taking photographs. So I have this. Please do not click photos of the photographs. Like the dam site, they say don't photograph the dam site. All India Radio has don't photograph. So I have a whole series of don't photograph. And this is interesting in the sense that the question of copyright, about circulation of image. I think images, and especially digital images, we are taking photographs of the people in that sense, and we are preventing people from taking photographs of our photographs. So, that's okay.
I think, yeah, it has been pretty overwhelming for me, I feel. And I really don't have anything more to add to this because Jerry has done wonderfully in navigating and carrying the whole talk through very well. And of course, Tarun, as wonderful as always. So
really nice.
Yeah, thank you for everyone who gave their time to be here and for your wonderful questions and your interaction.